Charu Sharma, a veteran in the field of sports commentary, the co-founder and director of the very, very popular Pro Kabaddi League. He has taken Kabaddi into next level. I think we all missed it in the year 2020. We hope it comes back in 2021. Welcome, Sir Charu, sir. Thank you so much for joining us in this podcast, Teachings from My Dad.
No, you're most welcome. Thank you so much for thinking of me and inviting me. And I do think the lessons one learns from our parents, particularly our father, I suppose, and mother too, not just dad, his mother too, are invaluable. And nobody should ever underestimate all the learnings that we get from our parents in either directly or indirectly. So congratulations for doing this, and I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you so much, sir. So let's start off with, how was your childhood like, sir? So how was your parents? You have siblings where you grew up with. How was your childhood? You could briefly tell us.
Well, in one word, carefree.
Okay.
which a lot of people were at that point of time, and that's how childhood should be. I was actually born at the Mayo College in Ajmer because my father in 1959, when I was born, was actually teaching there and was a housemaster amongst many other things. So he was very deeply embedded in everything that the Mayo College of Ajmer stood for. And his children, I being the youngest of three boys, were blessed to be born in an institution of that nature, because what did Mayo not offer and what does now Mayo not offer, perhaps even more than what it did in 1959. So all of us grew up on this very large campus of Mayo College Ajmer, 300 acres or whatever, and of course very secure too. It was a small town, Ajmer in Rajasthan, so there were no big town worries. I think everybody trusted everybody else, and it was just a wonderful, easy, happy upbringing. Now, on a teacher's salary, of course, there wasn't much going around, but we can get into that later, because perhaps one didn't need very much, and even now, if you look at it, one doesn't really need very much. The wants are, the way they are. But in terms of needs, I think my childhood, let's have this, let's have that. And I said, hold on, you don't really need it.
Like Sir said, teacher's salary and the difference between needs and wants, something which we all learn from our upbringings. So very nice childhood with three brothers. Yeah, three brothers.
Well, I'm the youngest of three. Yeah,
youngest of three.
The other two are older.
Okay, so very nice. So, and Ajmer College being one of the most reputed institutions, not only in India, in the world. So it's very nice to have a nice, different and learning environment, I think, when you all grew up there.
It was full of opportunity. I'll have to say it was full of opportunity. It depends on, the opportunities are in front of you. It depends on what you want to grab, what you want to use, what you want to utilize and carry on. And because of the sporting nature or the vast amount of sporting facilities that were on offer at Mayo, it was obviously an instant attraction. So I'm not suggesting that academically I wasn't too inclined, but I am suggesting that I was far, far more inclined in the world of sport from a very early age. Oh. And that kind of defined me then, and it continues to define me now.
Perfect. I think that is so important to what you are doing right now. A multifaceted sports personality, various things. I think you have covered most of the sports which is there in India, not just cricket. Many will know you from cricket, but you do various things, and your Pro Kabaddi League as well. One incident from your childhood which you felt now, or maybe when you're growing up, is maybe that was a very important, valuable lesson, but I got angry with my dad. Can you remember something?
Well, I was angry with my father often enough, and he was angry with me often enough. But lots of little incidences, and I must say, because teachers then, he was very, very generous and understanding and sympathetic and empathetic with almost every other student at Mayo, except perhaps with his own children. Certainly not with me, because he was. He just, I suppose, wanted to ensure that at least his own children were, in terms of values, as straight-laced as possible. That the old world values. Now, I'm not making a value judgment here. Perhaps I shouldn't use the word values, but these are just independent family traditions. And in our family, there was no smoking and no drinking and no eating meat and all those things. Now, you may say that, and I confess that to each their own. There's no harm, I suppose, if you're non-vegetarian or smoke, you drink, or whatever. These are all. So did my mother, where all these things were extremely taboo. It's not that he reasoned about why these things should be done or should not be done. Luckily for my father, said, "Okay, sir," So we grew up without questioning the fact that these things are not considered happy habits. And to this day, of course, I have inculcated that and remained a teetotaler, doesn't drink or smoke or whatever else. So I don't eat meat. But they may seem very petty in many ways, because this is just one of many other things that he insisted on. I remember once, even let's just take the smoking example. We used to play a little children's game those days, because I mean the games were very, if I may use the term, unsophisticated at that point of time. You just played whatever little you could get your hands on, right? So in the summer holidays, we had this silly little thing about drawing a little circle in the mud and putting these cigarette packet line and throw stones at them and then have fly out of the circle. And then so I was pretty good at it, pretty good at many sports actually. So I came back home with all these cigarette packet kind of half torn, not photos, but this from us. We just playing a game. He took it all and he threw it into the fire and he said, "Just don't ever mess with any of these things." I mean, he was pretty strict on many other things. I remember one lesson, if you don't mind my, in terms of gambling. Now, many people gamble, and I suppose whatever it's legal in whichever aspect. There's gambling on horses. There's also during the Diwali time in India, a lot of people feel free to gamble because they're too illegal at that point. Tell us the story. Of course, it's from his mouth firsthand. Not that I was present there, because I wasn't even born then. But they had that little teachers kind of club, right, within Mayo. So in the evening, the teachers once in a while, when they had time, used to meet, and there was a little bit of very small little wagers, kind of I mean, gambling on whatever it is. Let's not call it gambling, but still, you play some cards or whatever you do, very innocuous, innocent kind of stuff. And he came back home one day. Of course, he was telling me the story many, many years later, when I was willing and able to listen, that he actually won a little bit of money, whatever it was, 2 rupees, 5 rupees, whatever it was that point of time, in the early 50s. And he came back and he just felt so guilty about the fact that he had won this very small amount from a friend, a fellow teacher. And he said, if I had lost this amount, I would really be hurting. Now, okay, today, for the first time I've done this, I've actually won a bit, but it leaves me very, very upset. And he said he went to that other teacher friend of his, gave him the money back and said, I'm never, ever going to do this again. So for him, the whole concept of gambling also was something that he came down very hard on. And he found in the house, he said, throw these away, because they're going to lead you later into something that you might get very uncomfortable about. So, I mean, that was the extent to which he took his values and his beliefs. I must confess, his sons, at least this one, I mean, I'm like, do your own thing. That person, that thing, I don't make any value judgments, but I certainly realized what he was saying. And that's how I've kept myself all these years.
Very nice to hear this. Such an important value and these stories
but
way back.
I say once again, though, that one has to be generous, because these can be individual beliefs and values, but one should not be too judgmental, because other people will do what they will do, and as long as they're not harming you directly or in some major indirect fashion, then I suppose we have to realize that the world is full of different people, and everyone's unique, and everyone will have their own ways and their own beliefs and their own ideals. And the most we can do, which is difficult enough, is try and follow deeply what we believe in, because otherwise we keep wavering and we never really develop our personality or our character, which needs to be strong in certain ways, because I think that strength and depth in character and personality is something that defines a person.
Right. And coming to dads, generally are selfless. My dad was really selfless. The family was the main thing. He left his own needs and wants. Dads are very selfless. How was your dad in very selfless? How did he put his family first? Do you remember any incidents? And
He was selfless, and I'm sorry to say this, in all modesty on his behalf, with a capital S.
yes,
Very selfless. In fact, he used to take his children everywhere. Now, of course, it was a safe campus, but a lot of people leave their children at home when they go for some function or this or that or whatever.
yes,
But I think my father used to drag his children. Three of them, remember. Maybe I came much later. But this was earlier when he had, my oldest brother and my the one elder to me, but the one in the middle. He used to take them to most functions or to most other, fellow teachers' places or whatever. And I remember him telling me, my father, that one of the senior teachers used to say, "Arey Sharma, yeah, I've heard of people being henpecked," which is, of course, through the wife. But this is the first time I've seen somebody who's chick-pecked. Meaning you take your children everywhere and you're constantly catering to what your children need and what your children, are all about. So he was certainly very attentive to the fact that, or should we say, very supportive of everything we did. He was one of our early sporting coaches. I went on to do big things in the world of diving. In fact, all three of us brothers did. We were national champions. And so he spent a lot of time and attention sort of pushing us forward. The little bit of time he had, because he was a full-time teacher in a public school, there's no time, really. I mean,
right.
Every 10 minutes is accounted for, but he spared as much time as he could. But I think just that story about his being chick-pecked, in other words, paying so much attention to his children is I think, indicative.
So that was a very
or
interesting story of how your father took all of you out to various functions and helped you all in diving, various other sports as well. Coming now to something you can say more fun, or rather a memory, which you can say where your father was really angry with you and you were so very, very disappointed and he was very angry with you. But later on, over the years, maybe now or few years, decades back, you felt, okay, that was a very important lesson. Any such incident, sir?
Well, many. I mean, you can see this side of my cheek is all red because a pack, But, those were, none of us ever minded the fact that, we were severely reprimanded. But I remember, again, back in school, these are early memories. I also left home very early. I mean, not only, yes, he was teaching and we were in the same school, but, the schedule was so detailed that we barely spent time at home. So, and of course, then I went away to college and then everything else. So later life was, we, like all, I suppose, like most people, we were more friends later in life than otherwise. But in school, once again, during the summer holidays, when it gets really hot, the tennis courts at that point of time at Mayo had this sort of bamboo kind of, lattice work, which was painted over by black tar because, for visibility. I and a friend, when we were pretty young, were playing around, and I don't know how, maybe with a matchstick or whatever, we were lighting little fires of fire, and the whole tennis court backing, went on fire. It got lit. And of course, some people rushed in and tried to put the fire out and what have you. And then we were called up, and my father said, I was taken to him, and he said, "What did you do this time?" And I said, "Well, we were just playing. I don't know how, what happened." And, the whole tennis court sort of, the background got on fire. And so, of course, I got a tight one. And then I said, "But, the people who saw me do it, when they said, 'What are you doing? What are you doing?' And he said, 'No, nothing. I don't know how this fire started.' I said, 'Sorry to them,' because I'd learned by then that you just say sorry, you'll be all right." And he said, "That doesn't do it." And he said, saying sorry is not the end of the story. You've got to also you've got to take care of the problem and so on and so forth. But I just remember that one incident because I was so initially confused about the fact that once I've said sorry, what's the problem here? But of course, he then explained to me that sorry is just the first step. And then you have to, do so many things to get over the problems that one may have created. So it's just one small incident, but he got pretty angry pretty often because he used to teach mathematics, by the way. He was the head of department of mathematics also, and among many other things. And the one thing I could just never really get was, because it required a lot of work. Now, I'm not making excuses. I'm telling you the truth. But because we were so deeply involved in the world of sport, many other subjects were okay. But maths, you have to go back every time and do that homework and practice those sums again and kind of do. And I didn't really have that much time. So I just wasn't very good at math. And can you imagine a math teacher's son just, not doing too well? So we used to get home, and every once in a while, my mother used to get a little upset with my father, saying, "You teach everybody. What about your sons? They're not doing too well. What about looking after this, youngest, Charu?" So he's like, "Okay, come here, bring your books." I said, "Oh my God, here we go again." Bring my books, and then he used to sort of try and solve one or two things of that time, of that class. And when I couldn't, he said, "If you can't even do this, let's go to the start of the class, start of the year." It was start of the year, and I couldn't do that. But by then, I was also unraveling. You know what I mean? That's okay. Let's get to last year. Do you remember anything from last year? And then, of course, I wouldn't get that either. He'd go all the way 2, 3 more classes before, and oh boy. And on Parak, he said, "Well," he said, "My mother, I can't handle him. He knows nothing." But those were just, some moments where I suppose my weakness in mathematics really irritated him. But somehow I got through school and then college and what have you. Of course, I gave up mathematics along the way. Although I'm pretty good at arithmetic, by the way, which is what you need in life. But all those complicated mathematical things didn't do it for me.
Right. Actually leads me to the next question. What do you love most about your father's profession and his work ethics, etiquette? What do you loved most about his profession and his working style?
Well, he, was completely committed and dedicated as a teacher. Maybe those were the times. And I keep hearing from even Mayo now or many other schools that you can't, and I'm not kind of, blaming the teachers at this point of time. I'm sure there are plenty of wonderful teachers now, but the kind of time and attention the teachers in the past used to give to their students and give the kind of time they used to give to the school, I really don't think it's possible anymore, because maybe there was very little else to do those days. Right now, any old teacher also has so many 50 other things to do in terms of the internet or computer or this or that or whatever. But I think nobody who belongs to that era ever doubted the fact that my father gave himself completely to his profession, which, by the way, wasn't just teaching, but in a boarding school, of course, there are many other responsibilities, and he took all of them up, from NCC to scouting to, to all sorts of other trekking and all the other outdoor activities in the sports, and he was very deeply into everything. And I suppose I've kind of imbibed a bit of that because I appreciate everything. I spare time for anything and everything that I can possibly do. Nothing is taboo for me. Nothing is like, I mean, I try very hard not to say I don't have time for this, I don't have the time for that. It's up to us to make time for more and more things, because I don't know about you, Vinay, but I only know this one lifetime. I don't know about the ones before. I don't know about the ones later. So I'm very happy to do as much as I possibly can, stuff it into this one lifetime, because I mean, there is time for so many things. And my wife generally gets upset every once in a while saying, "Why are you spreading yourself so thin? You go from one thing to the other and one thing to the other all the time. Just sit back, relax, take it easy." But I can't, because I want to do more and more and more things every day.
That's wonderful, sir. That's why I think you even took time for this. I think from your busy schedule, you're taking time.
No, but nobody's too busy here.
Yes.
Don't let anyone tell you that.
Thank you so much, sir.
It's
Thank
just
you
that,
for
do you want to do it or you not want to do it? If you don't want to do it, you'll find an excuse. If you want to do it, you'll find a reason.
Perfect. That's so well said. I think viewers should take this note from Charu, sir. Coming next, I'm sure if I look back now, I think my dad would have made some mistakes in his life, and I feel maybe a smaller mistakes like maybe he didn't invest well or in plan few for the future, because we are more now prone to technology. We have this app, we know how to invest and all those things. But the previous generations obviously had their restrictions. What do you feel that your dad made a mistake, or any mistake, or you think is a mistake, maybe could have been rectified, could have been done in a different way when you look back now?
Well, I wasn't looking to receive anything materially from my parents, okay? But I will have to say that he was excessively trusting. Maybe those were the times when a lot of people were excessively trusting. Bosne bol diya, bas ho jayega. He said it, so it's done. But, so his paperwork for the 2 or 3 things that he might have wanted to invest in life was very weak. And he got completely hugely taken advantage of that. And the sad thing is that I suppose things are very genetic in nature. And I'm also guilty of being a little over trusting. And my wife's far more practical. She says, "Have you done the proper paperwork?" I said, no, I've talked to him. It's okay. But it doesn't happen. So he made a few mistakes in terms of whatever little he had for investing was not very secure. And so he ended up with not a bean in his pocket. But luckily, my eldest brother was doing well enough early on in his career, so he kind of supported the family to begin with, our parents, and then did very well because he's a good son, a good elder son. And then, of course, all of us brothers contributed to my parents to make sure that they were somewhat comfortable towards the end of their life, because he made absolutely, he had nothing, no reserves, no this, no investment, nothing. So the home that he lived in till he died, many years ago, was also bought by my eldest brother, and so on and so forth. So, and all of us contributed in various ways. I paid for the household help, and so, so we kept it going. My middle brother paid all the medical bills that came up, and so that's how we kept on with it. But he had absolutely nothing to his name. Now, you might say, I don't know what people would say, but I think it's unfortunate, because after a lifetime of work, if you have absolutely nothing to your name, that's a little awkward, isn't it? It's unfortunately something that I've also imbibed a bit, and I've made several investments which were not secure. And have I learned my lesson? Finally, I think I have. But a lot of damage has been done. And compared to my father, of course, I suppose, or I suspect I'm far more secure. But I could have been twice, thrice as secure as I am now had I just made not wiser, but just more secure decisions, where the unsecure part of it was taken advantage of. And I just am not of the nature where I, fight for situations which were probably my own mistake. And sure, I could go and prove that, so-and-so didn't pay me back with this, that, and the other. But my attitude is, no, forget it. Let's just kind of manage ourselves better hereafter. So I think he was not very clever in that area, and neither is his youngest son very clever in that area. But I'm slightly better than my father.
Good. Some lessons then you are taking forward from that. A fun nostalgic note, maybe. What is one thing? Okay, if I ask you just right now in 5 seconds, what is the most fun nostalgic moment you remember of your dad? It can be anything.
Well, I mean, so many. But I mean, for instance, we were divers, right? And he'd spare a little bit of time because he was so busy in school. And he'd come to the swimming pool and he'd say, okay, I've got a few minutes. Come on, show me this dive, show me that dive. The complicated dives, right? Because, artistic springboard diving, this sometimes can be very complicated. And we were pretty young still. And he'd say, okay, are you ready? And we'd say, oh, okay, I'm ready. He was okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And I said, oh, wait, I'm not ready for it. And, so he said, okay, 1, 2, 3, and I take half a step forward. No, I'm not ready. I mean, he got to the point of such irritation that he stomped out and said, well, if you're not ready, then for heaven's sake, don't waste my time. Because complicated dives kind of, make you hesitate a bit. So that was one area where forever in our life, we used to keep saying 1, 2, 3, wait. And, many others, I suppose. But there was we went on a lovely trek to the Himalayas, a winter trek. And we went up to the Pindari Glacier with him and just us and a couple of other young friends. So, being very outdoorsy, because at the drop of a hat, he would take us out for a moonlight picnic somewhere in these small towns. We go out into the sand dunes outside Ajmer, and those are just wonderful moments because they were all sort of, on the spur of the moment. There was no planning. Okay, it's kind of looks like a pretty nice moonlit night. Let's make a couple of rotis or whatever, and let's step out. We'd walk around all night here and there, everywhere, rest up in the dunes and come back early in the morning, having a wonderful moonlit walk, So I hope it happens with a lot of other people now, or certainly did then. But these are wonderful moments that you share with your family, which are not particularly planned and short kind of breaks. But now people go for long breaks. And those days, nobody had the money. No, I shouldn't say nobody. We certainly didn't have the money to travel here, there, and the other. So these short trips were our bonding trips.
I think the impromptu-ness is what I think your dad took you all.
Just pick it up. Let's go. So it wasn't like, no, but this, but that. No, let's just go. And even these days, anybody comes up with anything and I say, yeah, let's do it.
Yes, that's very nice. One thing you regret not doing for your father? Maybe, I think it's an emotional question or could be a...
Yeah, that's unfair, Vinay, because I mean...
it's up to you to answer that, or you can...
No, what do you mean one thing? I mean, hundreds of things that we probably didn't do for our father because, we were traveling and doing our own thing, and I was all over the place. My brothers were everywhere else. He lived alone with our mother in Dehradun, and we were all pretty far away. So did not spend enough time, when later in his life. I mean, because everybody gets so busy and, we're running around. I keep telling you that I do so many things anyway, that I don't think we spared enough time. And his health deteriorated, and he, of course, was kind of carefree about it, but we should have taken more care about his health, I suppose. And, maybe he could have stayed with us a lot more, but I was always traveling and, my stations, I was being transferred all over the place. So, yeah, I do regret the fact that we didn't spend enough time with him. And I think his knee started giving way later in his life. And maybe, we went to the doctors, by the way. I did try and get a knee replacement for him done so that he could just be a little more, active. Because when you're very active, a very active man, as is his son, then when something goes wrong and you lose that sort of high activity zone, then it just, it slows you down. And I think that knee of his slowed him down. And, he also got late age diabetes. So the doctor said, don't mess with his knee now because, it may not work out too well. So I don't think we looked after him well medically, but he was a man, if I may say so for him on his behalf, of very, very few needs. So I don't think he ever missed anything because, when you have few needs, those are almost always easily met. He used to love going shopping for vegetables and fruit and this, that, and the other. Anywhere there's a fruit stall, he would stop and buy a fruit or two. I mean, his nowadays, of course, we talk about must eat this, must eat that, good for you, bad for you, etc. Just naturally, his diet was extremely healthy. I mean, he lived to 87 and he died, back in 2008. So this, by the way, Vinay, is his 100th year. So you've chosen a good time to talk to me. It's my father's centenary year. Okay. And so a lot of those habits I follow. I love raw vegetables. I love shopping for fruit. You smell each one, you see each one. And, this whole thing he certainly passed down on to me. My children are not ready to learn it from me. I'm saying, come on, let's go shop for some fruits and vegetables. They're saying, I'll just order it. I'm saying, come on, it's an art of, seeing each vegetable, selecting each one or a fruit or whatever and bringing it all back. But those were things he loved to do. And, it's all very simple, but it's a nice skill to have.
That actually leads me to the penultimate question. How are you as a father, and what have you imbibed from your father, which you're passing on to your children?
Well, well, if he was an A, I'm an F. Gosh, no excuses. But I had a hugely traveling life all my life. I mean, for the last 40 years, all I've done is travel, because of work, because of whatever else. And so therefore, as you can imagine, my time at home was at a real premium. Not enough by far. So my wife is the one who really brought the children up. And I played a very peripheral role, sadly. I mean, what I did imbibe from my father and pass on is this open admission of great love for my children, right? I'm very huggy and I'm very loving and what have you, but I don't think I've done enough with them or for them. So my wife keeps saying, all this outward show of love means nothing. You got to do for them. You got to be them. But, it's only, strangely enough, it's only because of this terrible COVID time, the last 12 months or so, that I've been home. After 40 years, I've actually been home for a length of time. So it was wonderful spending time with both my boys. I've got two boys who are 32, almost 33, and 29, beg your pardon. So they're all grown up, or they're at home, and it's nice to have them. I mean, it's too late, I suppose, to kind of, so, I mean, we have a very easy relationship, but I do think somewhere at the back of their minds, both my boys know that I didn't really spend too much time with them when I should have. So guilty as charged.
And the final question, what are you most thankful for your father? Anything you're most thankful for? That I think is a perfect final question and a tribute, like you said, for his 100th birth anniversary. What you're most thankful for your father?
Well, I'd love to use individual words, but if I can use a universal word, I thank him for instilling a very high degree of the concept of humanity in me and my other two brothers as well. Because all of us, all three of us, I think are, and this is a little immodest, so I do beg your pardon, but I think we have a heightened sense of being good human beings. So the one word that I would like to use as an explanation is simplicity. I think that was a key element in his life, and it's a key element in my life. Extreme simplicity. Uh, I'm happy to dine with the king, and I'm happy to break bread with somebody on the street, anybody. Highest, lowest, everybody's the same for me. I mean, you could be the president of India, or you could be Vinay, or you could be anybody. And I'm happy to talk to you just the same way I talk to anybody else. So I think this, other such human values like honesty and simplicity and ethical behavior, and all the things that last the longest, because material things come and go, belongings come and go, but these things kind of stay the longest. So I'm very excessively concerned about the fact that I should not be in any way harmful to anybody else. So, these are certainly values that have been passed down from my father, from my parents, my mother too, very gentle soul. Both of them, of course, are not alive. It would have been my mother's 97th year, my father's 100th. But yeah, so extreme simplicity, I think. The ability to accept every situation happily and not complain and crib all the time about, I don't have this or this, that, or somebody else has that or whatever. I'm very happy with my skin, perhaps because of what my parents taught me. And that makes life so much simpler and easier to lead and to live if you're happy with your own skin, if you're happy with what you have, and if your needs are at an extreme minimum, then everything else is a bonus. So I feel every day of my life is a fabulous bonus, and I enjoy every day to the fullest.
Wonderful, wonderful note to end with, sir. Thank you so much, Charu, sir, for this wonderful podcast. All you viewers, we have a huge variety of youngsters who watch, because being a quiz master, I deal with a lot of students. Your closing notes, because this generation, our generation, I'm saying, is the age teenagers. What is your final thought to them, or how do you want them to lead their life? Like you already said, lead your life daily more joyful and respect and various values, but something which you feel is lacking in the current generation, and you want to close this podcast by giving some message to them, because we all would want to hear from you.
Well, the one thing I've learned is not to offer free advice, because nobody appreciates it. But I only want to offer words of appreciation to the youngest generation, those who are sort of 12, 15, 18, whoever's watching now. I think all of you obviously have tremendous exposure because of the internet and because of many other sources of information, television. All the youngsters know so much, but I would only, if the youngsters don't mind, and my apologies if you do, because these days it's best to apologize before saying anything to the youngsters before they mind something or the other. I just feel that it's very tough for me to suggest anything, because I don't want people saying, well, you can keep your values to yourself. But I would wish that the youngsters today were, what's the word here? Can I use the word humility?
I was going to say that as well.
I would love for the youngsters to just understand the concept of humility, the concept of being calm, respectful, humble, and yet be as super achieving as possible. It is possible, everybody listening out there, to be super achieving as a sportsman, academically, or any which way, and yet be humble about it. I mean, arrogance to me doesn't sit well. And it may sometimes be only false arrogance, because very often people are arrogant and offensive and aggressive only to hide the fact that they're not achieving too much or don't know. So, life's very complicated. Each one of us is absolutely unique. So I would offer some free advice against my own judgment that youngsters, please don't be too judgmental or too arrogant, because you don't really know. You don't know enough about any one thing to be judging so quickly. So be relaxed, be calm, be accepting of everybody else just the way they are, because to be judgmental, to say right and wrong and all that, you don't have enough information or experience or the wisdom to judge what is right or wrong. So take your time, be patient, relax, take it easy, enjoy life, and be humble about your achievements. You'll find that things fall into place. So, good luck to them all. I think they're all very sort of intelligent, well-informed young generation. But if you were to exercise a little more patience, a little more humility, you might find that you might make a lot more friends, or that you might just enjoy life a lot more. So, and my last word of advice, which is not to presume that all the youngsters are not, but my hope and wish and my trust is the fact that most of the youngsters grow up with a high sense of positivity. Now, you may think it's a simple word and it's been used so often, positivity. What does that mean? But I don't wish that the youngsters get into any negative emotion at all in terms of frustration and depression and all the rest of the words that indicate a negative situation. Nothing is that bad. So all you youngsters out there, please work hard at developing, if you can, because you can train yourself or condition yourself into anything. Develop more positivity in you and around you, and you'll find that you enjoy life so much more. And after all this, we know. And if you're not enjoying it and having a great time, what's the point of it all?
Thank you so much, sir. I think that sums up the entire motive of doing this podcast. One is about teachings from our dads, and also the values in the other value systems, which I wanted the young viewers who are watching to learn from such personalities. So thank you all once again for joining in, and a
Most
huge
welcome.
thank you so much for Mr. Charu Sharma to telling us entire life with his father. And I didn't know about this tribute. It is a perfect tribute for his 100th birth anniversary. It's for his dad and my dad. My name is Vinay Mudaliar. Thank you all for joining in for teachings from my dad. Thank you so much.